Hello everyone, this is Laszlo, and I wanted to give you another follow-up video on how I made the Oracle AI block for space engineers. In a previous game making video on the channel, I've already made the model in Blender, more or less. I just wanted to give you a quick list of the things that I've done afterwards, sort of to show you how the completed model came to life. So after the model was completed, the first thing I did, I was removing all the faces that I no longer need on the model. If you look at closely, for example, the eye part was half a sphere, but if you look into the other side of it, which is not visible anyway, this side was removed completely. And the same for the other eyes as well. So whatever is not visible, you can comfortably remove. You just need to make sure that it is inside the other part of the model. I did the same with the cables. I individually removed the back end of them. Wherever it is not visible, we can get away with this one. So I went through all of this, and since the model was smoothed, I was also applied sharp edges wherever it was needed, wherever I wanted the model to have a sharp edge. What was the next step was, after all this cleanup was done, I added the seams for the model. You can do that by selecting any edge. Basically, the seams are the parts where you can unfold the model. It basically will cut the mesh at this line, and it will unwrap it in the next step when we are doing the UV unwrap for the model. I basically went through all the parts and tried to make a seam where it was logical. I was cut mostly where it was not visible, and I tried to make sure that whenever you unfold it, you will get a clean and even UV island. UV island is basically how the model was cut up. So if you look at this one, this already has some texture in it, just ignore that part. It's basically a cutout of the model. Every section, like I was talking about the eye before, which is not actually taking up too much space because it is just one color, you will probably find it down here. And if you look at it, it will just cover a small portion of texture. And it was cut based on the seam that I previously set. Oh, one more thing that before I forget, when you are doing the UV unwrapping for anything, before that you need to go to object mode. You need to make sure that everything in your model is selected, and then go to object, apply all transforms. This will basically set the model scale to 1, I mean in a uniform scale, so it will, if you applied any deformations on it, like scaling or repositioning, it will just set everything to 0, so everything should be fixed. That basically tells the Blender that the model that you are making is as it should be, so basically the scale will not be weird. After that, you go to edit mode, select 3, which is faces selection, select everything and press U and unwrap, and that will give you a UV unwrap that is basically all the faces of your model. You will need this in order to create a texture for it. Alright, so you have the UV unwrap done. Then you don't actually need to create a texture for it in Blender if you are not doing the textures in Blender but trying to make it in Substance Painter. So then you need to export your model. So in general when you are making a model, like a PBR model that has high and low poly version as well, you export the low poly mesh and the high poly mesh, and you bake over the details from that to the low poly. So that basically the details of the high poly mesh will appear, they will look like they are on the low poly mesh. It will make more sense when I do it in Substance Painter in later videos, but for this model I only had the low poly mesh, so I had no high poly mesh details to bake onto this. But regardless of that, you can use the low poly mesh to bake details like ambient occlusion, which is basically like the shadows in all these small details or where two parts meet. Or you can apply normal maps which can have you show details on the model which otherwise are not there. Let me quickly jump to Substance Painter and then I will show you how I created the texture for this model. Alright, so here we are in Substance Painter. Now I create a new project. I don't really need to do anything on this section, I just need to add the low poly mesh. And when I add it will load in my model. You can move around the viewport part of it with pressing Alt and left mouse button will rotate it, and Alt and middle mouse button will move the model around so you can navigate around it. The first step that I did was I baked mesh details. You can do that by edit and bake mesh maps. You need to select the resolution of the maps that you will bake. I took this dilation down and all these distances because I use this one, use low poly mesh as high poly mesh. So basically I'm baking just using this low poly version of the mesh, and it will not add additional details in terms of like sculpted details. It will just add the ambient occlusion, normal maps, and whatever is listed here, curvature, position, thickness. You probably won't need most of these, like ID maps you will not need for this small model for sure. And when you one more thing, I usually add this anti-aliasing as well. So now when I press bake mesh maps, it will go through all the maps and it will make our model nice. Make sure that the scale is reflected well on the textures and texture details. And when it's done, you see that it's already looking way better because the shadows of the ambient occlusion are showing their effect on the model. So this is already very cool. You can look at all your materials at once or the single maps that they have been baked out. So the base color is currently nothing because we have not painted on any textures. Metallic is also empty because we have not specified that one. But if you're looking at normal, I wanted to show the ambient occlusion, for example. You see here the shadows between various parts of the object. So this is very nice. This is making their effect on the on how the model is displayed already. Alright, so when you get to this point, I just delete this layer because I don't particularly need. What I used to add the textures for this model were 3DX's Stylized material. This is a complex smart material made by a very cool artist. You can find him on YouTube by the name of 3DX. I will put a link down the video. He has great expertise in creating materials both in Substance Painter and Substance Designer. He's expert in making very good stylized textures, and on his Gumroad account he has this stylized material, which is basically something that can be used for anything and everything if you want to achieve a certain stylized look. Let me just pull this one here, and this is the basic look, which I thought looks very cool, almost like if it would be rusted or covered by mud. but it's very nice, I like it. But you don't need the whole model to look like this. So I will show you how you can apply this material to just certain parts of the model, because that actually took me quite a while to learn myself. Alright, so first I rename this material, let's say light metal, because that will be just like the outer part, let's say. And then you need to right click here and add the black mask. Black mask means that it will not apply the material to any of this, and you need to specify basically white parts on this black mask. So wherever it will be white, it will apply the material. Wherever it will be black, will not apply the material. So this is how you can apply different materials to certain parts of your model. Now the black mask is active, and I click on this one, which is polygon fill. This will allow us to basically select polygons on this model, and based on that it will apply the material. It will basically allow the material to bleed through the mask, so to say. Here in these settings you can find, if you just wanna select one triangle, a polygon, which is basically like one square, or this is the one that I really like, mesh fill. This is basically understanding the separate parts of the model, and whatever you select will be basically applied the material to. So let me just select this one, mesh fill, and then I click on the model to the parts that I want this material to be applied. And you can follow it along here on the texture as well. I like this light metal part also to be present on the mouse cover, so I take these two also in. And now that you have that, you can open up the smart material. It has a metallic part and it has a base parameter part. This is basically the base color of it. But if you will use the material, since it's above these base parameters, it will overwrite it. So if I enable the metallic part, you will see that the metallic section is showing, and you don't actually need this part for anything. You can delete that. If you open this one further up, you see it has surface details, which are basically small imperfections around the corner that you might see. Edge damage, which well, it doesn't have much at this point. Whichever you don't need from this, you can just delete. And the meat and potato of things here in the main parameters section is when you open this up, and here you see the various parts of the material that you can influence. It has edge coloring. You can change that to a different color if you want a different color edge. Let's just say I want to put it orange, or like bright red, and you see here wherever there's an edge it will add some coloring to that edge highlight. So I don't actually need much of that, and even if it is, it might be something light like that. It has various settings that you can add: top gradient, bottom gradient. It has base dirt, which basically this dirty section of the model. Let me just make this a bit bigger. And if you remove this or make it smaller, then you will not have dirt. If you make this smaller, you will not have as much dirt on the bottom of it. You can crank this up way much, and it looks like it was burned in a fire. I really like this. But anyway, just for trying this out, I will add a little bit of that one. Curvature, backlighting, that sort of settings are for a more complex model, or I don't need them with this very simple model. Roughness, that's basically how shiny the metal will be. If you put it down to minimum, it will be like a mirror. But I don't think it would fit to Space Engineers that much, so I was just leaving it somewhere in the middle, so you can see some kind of a sheen on it. And basically that's it. You can completely remove the dirt with the settings as well. But this is one material done. If you want to add more parts that will use this, you need to click back here to the basically the black mask, and just select the parts that you think would be a good fit for the light metal part. I'll just add this to this small sections. Oh, not that. Ctrl Z. So I can come a bit closer, and then I can select. Okay. So yeah, you have one material done. And then, if you want to add something more, like cables, you pull another instance of this material and you pull it above your existing one. This will overwrite everything again, and if you want it to be not showing everywhere, then as before, you need to add the black mask. You select polygon fill, mesh fill, and then you just need to select the parts where you want this new material to apply. So I will call this one cable, and I will select all the cables. Where it will apply. Alright, so now that you have all the cables selected, you can go into this. The cables are usually not metallic that much, so you can basically delete the metallic part from this one and just adjust the base parameters to something that you will like. It will be something like black. I really like this. Since they are not really curving, it doesn't really matter what kind of an edge color you give to them, but let's say I give it something like a bluish tint, because just out of what I would like to see. And if you go down to roughness, I added a bit more reflection to it, so it will actually look like plastic cables. Oh, I missed one cable here, so I can go back to the mask and click on this one to add it. And that's all the cables done. This one will, well, basically this is how you will add all the different faces to what you need. I will show you one more thing. So a mesh doesn't need to have one specific material. You can have something that has multiple. So let's say I want to color this one, this shock absorber to cable color, but I don't want this lower section, this piston part, to be the same color. So that's when you can select this one, which is polygon fill, and you will be able to add new materials to this. So let's say I can actually duplicate this light metal. I will duplicate layer, and I will pull it above the cable so it will overwrite whatever is in the cable. Let's say this will be chrome metal. I need to clear the mask because it is still using the mask from the previous one. And now I need to select what I want this to apply to. So I have this metallic texture just like the outer side of this model, but I can modify this to have more roughness, so it will be more reflective, so almost like mirroring. And I also need to remove the dirt from it because I want this to look like something that is used a lot. And I can also, instead of the darker main color, I add something which is like lighter gray. Alright, so I have that set up. I click back to the mask, and with polygon fill selected, I just click on these sections here which I want this to apply to. And when you select all that, I misclicked maybe. Okay, so this one. Let's go through this one leg after that. Alright, and I don't need edge damage for this one. And there you go. You see that it's one mesh, but I can color different parts of it with different materials, in which case it's a shiny metal thing. So this is how you go through the whole model. You paint every part to the color that you want, and as a final step you will need to export it out. Let me quickly forward to the part where I actually have this model already fully colored, and I will show you how to export the textures. Alright, so here we are. This is the final model with all the shiny metallic textures, cables and everything that I added. I have all the various materials like different eye colors, chrome metal, armor sections here, and they are building up on each other, and I put everything into one texture folder there. The next step will be to export this texture out. So this is how the texture, the material will look like. So you see some parts of it are shiny metallic, other parts are darker and reddish. So this is good. This is the thing you want to achieve. And then you go to here, File and Export Textures. Here you will need to specify in what format you want these textures to appear. And there are various presets. I created one for Space Engineers because it's a wonky system. You see all the input maps here and mesh maps that this program generates or can generate. And you can basically build what will be in the texture itself. So for the first one, color and metal, that's the CM stands for, you will select base color and then just pull it here, and it says RGB channels. It will basically fill out the red, green and blue channels of this texture. And for A, which is like the alpha channel of this texture, I had to add the metallic for it. This is how the Space Engineers will read it. And the rest is filled out as per the STUT manual about how to create Space Engineers textures as well. Unfortunately, this last one, I was trying to work on this for a very long time, but even though it works perfectly in Blender and Substance Painter and everywhere, Space Engineers is having an issue with the last map, which is basically the ambient occlusion, the emissive textures, and basically a coloring mask. I created everything, I think, as it was in the manual, and I was also talking with the SUT people who are created the modding community in Space Engineers, and they were basically trying to help me with this one with no success. I was trying to create this for Space Engineers for 3 days, and we were not able to put every map there. But regardless of that, the model works fairly well without these as well. Looks a bit more plain. You will see it in my gameplay walkthrough eventually. But anyway, there are multiple ways to export the textures. What I will use probably later on in the channel is this one, Unreal Engine Packed. So it is similar, it will export 4 textures, and they are packed various aspects of the texture into one model. So the first one will be RGB, which is the base color. Alpha will be opacity mask. So the red channel on the second texture will be the ambient occlusion. G, roughness for the green channel, and metallic for the blue. And basically when you are in Unreal Engine, you just need to wire these up to the Unreal Engine material, and it will display your thing fairly well. It has no issues with displaying all the maps like emission and ambient occlusion. So in Unreal Engine, your textures will look good if you are exporting in this Unreal Engine format. So here you need to specify the location where you want to put the format, basically the preset that I was previously showing, file type, and the texture size you need to specify. I was left it in 2K. And when you are done, just press export and it will output everything as it should. It will create the texture maps, and after that you can use them to display your model. This is how the Oracle AI block came to life. And then you just need to worry about putting it into the game, which in case of Space Engineers it is not particularly easy, but doable. I will probably have some time to show this in Unreal, just so you see how it will look in Unreal Engine. And you will later on see it in Space Engineers as well when I eventually find it. Let me jump to Unreal Engine and show you how this looks there. Alright, so here we are in Unreal Engine. I just create a new folder for the block, and I will import it here. I don't really need to do anything with the import settings, so it should be good for the moment. And I have something called SUT material, which we probably don't need. I just need to add the textures to it as well. Let me jump ahead when I have the textures here. Alright, so here are the textures in Unreal Engine. Let me open up this material, and we don't really need that. It should be named somewhat similar to what's in the or how the model is called, but it should be okay for just a quick demo to show what are these and how these work. Alright, so remember the texture export settings in Substance Painter for Unreal Engine Packed. So each of the channel of these materials corresponds to something something useful that will add to the material. So this will be the base texture, which contains the base color in RGB. So for the RGB node, we can just call it here into base color. It doesn't have opacity, so I don't really need to do anything with this alpha channel. I can leave it as it is. I have this packed channel here, and let me quickly cheat a bit on what goes where. For the second one, the red channel will be ambient occlusion. The green channel will be roughness. And the blue channel will be metallic. Okay. And this one will have the normal map in RGB. And that's it. It has an emissive texture as well, but I don't think it has any value on it. Let me just add it anyway. Maybe it has some very light color. And you will not see much from this one yet. We need to add this material to the model as well. Save it and close it. And this is the model. And it has a material slot, and you can pull in your material simply here. It will highlight, and this is how your model will look in Unreal Engine, more or less ready with all the reflections and everything. Maybe a bit too much reflections. And you can just pull one out here. I'll just put it on the surface a little bit, so we can inspect it in game. Alright, so here we are. I'm absolutely proud of this grass. This is something that I have made, and this is the most I've worked on grass ever. The bottom part is not moving as much, and the rest is just nice. Maybe I will need to make another tutorial of this one day. Right, so here is our model in Unreal Engine. It will obviously need some adjusting, so it will fit better to the ground. But here it is. It is shiny. It is what it's supposed to look like. It has all the nice chromy parts. And that's it. Later on, this model can have some function. It can talk to you, you can move it around, and so on. But this is just a base mesh, and this is how it will look like if you put it to Unreal Engine. And that was all about this quick video about the rest of the model making process and how to achieve the final mesh and textures in Unreal Engine for this one model. I hope you liked it. If you do, give it a like. Bye!